What's going on, everyone? This is Dom, and today we are getting into the age-old debate, tale as old as time, of Android versus iOS. Now, there's obviously been some advancements on both sides of the fence with these mobile operating systems, but which one is actually better these days? So obviously with this debate, we have a few different points to hit on here, and the first one being customization. I mean, Android has been ahead of the pack for a long time when it comes down to customizing your own experience on its operating system. Now, iOS has caught up a bit in recent years when it comes to like lock screen customization and widgets, etc. But I still think Android is ahead of iOS in that department. So obviously consistency is a big part of the mobile operating system experience, right? Something that you use every single day. It's gotta be consistent, right? Well, Android doesn't have much consistency in its mobile operating system. And what I mean by that is the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of Android devices all running a slightly different flavor of Android, right? So we don't have a lot of consistency as far as operating systems go, because you can buy a plethora of devices that run Android and they're all gonna run things a little bit different. So it's a mixed bag in terms of what you're getting as far as consistency goes on Android, where on the iOS side, there are only so many devices that run iOS, and especially when we're talking about smartphones, there are only a handful of smartphones that run iOS, and those are all made by Apple. So you actually have less freedom of choice in terms of which device you're going to buy when you pick up an iPhone versus an Android device where you have tons, hundreds of thousands of options to choose from, and they might seem overwhelming because there are so many different Android devices out there. But with iOS, well, you only got the iPhone. Now, the thing with Android having multiple options is the fact that it's heavily skinned, tailored to the device that it's running on. So Samsung has their own tailored version of Android that they use on like the Galaxy S23. Google has their tailored version of Android that they use on the Pixel 7 Pro. And that is how it goes. Basically, each manufacturer puts their own little spin on the Android experience, and sometimes that either furthers customization or in some cases limits customization that can be done on Android. And that's just kind of a fact out there. But with iOS, you're getting iOS. You know which iOS you're getting when you go from one iPhone to another iPhone. They're tailored exactly the same on each of those devices, and some people might find that to be a benefit. Real quick though, I want to give a huge shout out to channel sponsor CaseQ and their new Magic Stand case. This case is absolutely awesome because it does have the MagSafe connector point on the back side of it, and it'll work with all of your MagSafe accessories, but this one is a little bit different because you can actually pull out this MagSafe portion and it's on a hinge, so you can use it as a stand, or you can use it to slip your fingers through for better grip on your phone. It is probably one of my favorite cases right now, and I'm a huge fan of CaseQ and this Magic Stand case. So if you want to pick one up for yourself and even get a little discount, check out the link below in the description, and you can use my code down there as well to save some money on a Magic Stand case for yourself. Big shout out to CaseQ for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about hardware and software availability. As I mentioned before, there is no shortage of Android devices that you can pick up out there, whereas the iPhone, you're stuck in a specific set of price points. Now that may not be a bad thing because Apple does have a wide range of price points that are available for iOS devices and iPhones specifically, but with Android, you have stuff from $50 ranging up to all the way to $500 to $1,000 plus for different Android smartphones, and that can be confusing to some people. Which Android smartphone do you pick? If you're an Android fan, but you're not too well versed in the different skins or theming that happens on Android devices, which one should you get? There are so many options out there, but really at the forefront of things, we have a couple of companies. We have Samsung and we have Google. Those are the two that are just leading the Android space right now. And on the iOS side, obviously, we only have Apple. Now let's talk about software availability, specifically speaking on the app stores. We have the Google Play Store and we have the App Store from Apple on iOS devices. And I hate to say it, but it's pretty objective point that a lot of apps that are developed on Android are not as good as their iOS counterparts. And that's just a thing that we've known for quite some time. Apps on Android can be good, and there are a lot of them that are great, but they're just not as finely tuned as they are on iOS. And that might come down to the differences between hundreds of thousands of Android devices. You can't tailor your app to work on every single Android device. You can only tailor it to work on the development resources that you have from Google. But in terms of being on an iOS device or an iPhone specifically, you can pretty much tailor your app to work on all 4 or 5 iPhones that they currently have for sale, which is a lot easier to do than tailoring everything for every single Android device out there, which is just impossible. Now, when it comes to usability, that is going to be a personal preference, right? You can't objectively say that iOS is better than Android or that Android is better than iOS because they offer different things to different people. And it's important to note too that a lot of people stay away from iOS devices because of the walled garden of Apple, but there's kind of a similar thing happening with Samsung devices and Google devices where all your services, if you are on all Android devices, kind of work together, and it's kind of hard to leave that ecosystem. And a lot of people have the same thing with iOS devices. Once you are immersed in that iOS atmosphere or environment, you're gonna be using all of the resources from that phone and how it connects to all of your other devices from Apple or like an iPad or something like that. But with Android, you don't have as much of that, at least not yet. It's starting to become more plentiful in Android devices, like I said, where they communicate very well with other devices in that Android ecosystem, but we don't yet have that same walled garden effect on Android as we do iOS. So to answer the question, is Android still better than iOS? I'm gonna say there are certain aspects of it where it is, but there are other aspects of it where iOS has an easier fit into different devices because there are only a handful of them that run iOS. Like I said, if we're speaking specifically about iPhones, there are only a handful of iPhones, and you're going to get a much better user experience in the long run possibly on an iOS device versus an Android device. But again, it comes down to personal preference. If you think Android is better than iOS, I would love to hear your comment and why down in those comment sections below. Or if you think iOS is better than Android, I would love to hear that as well. Let's keep the discussion pretty simple and straightforward and nice, because I know this is kind of a sensitive subject for a lot of people out there. But I would love to know your take on the whole thing down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to hit the thumbs up button. If you're new around here to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when new videos like this drop in the near future. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Once again, this is Dom, and I will catch you in the next video.